The studio was already tense before the cameras turned on. Not chaotic, not loud, just tense in the way that happens when everyone in the room knows something might go wrong, and no one's sure who will pull the trigger. Chuck Norris was scheduled to appear on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. It had been marketed as a lighthearted segment, a chance for the 84-year-old martial arts legend to promote his new Veterans Charity initiative. But that was just the version sold to the audience. Behind the scenes, there were tensions, miscommunications, and a fundamental clash of worldviews waiting to explode. The problem started during the pre-show meeting. Chuck arrived at the Ed Sullivan Theater at 4:15 p.m., moving with the controlled grace of someone who'd spent 7 decades perfecting the art of physical discipline. He wore his standard public appearance attire, dark jeans, a black button-down shirt, and boots that had seen real work. No flash, no pretense. Just Chuck Norris, exactly as advertised. The show's senior producer, Marcus Webb, met him in the lobby. Mid-30s, pressed suit, the kind of nervous energy that comes from managing volatile personalities for a living. He extended his hand, and Chuck shook it with measured force. Marcus spoke first, his tone professionally upbeat. "Mr. Norris, great to have you here. Stephen's really looking forward to this." Chuck's response was direct. "Good to be here. My team sent over the talking points about the Kickstart Kids program and the new Veterans Initiative." "Absolutely," Marcus said, though something flickered in his eyes. "We've got everything. Just a few minor adjustments to go over." They walked through the backstage maze, past makeup rooms and green rooms, to a small conference area. 3 other producers sat around a table, tablets and notepads at the ready. The atmosphere felt more like a negotiation than a comedy show prep. Sarah Chun, the segment producer, opened the discussion. "So, Mr. Norris, we're thinking we'll start with some fun stuff. Maybe play into some of the Chuck Norris jokes, get the audience warmed up." Chuck's expression didn't change, but his voice carried a slight edge. "I thought we were focusing on the charity work. That's why I'm here." Marcus jumped in quickly. Of course. But Stephen's audience expects a certain energy. We can definitely get to the charity, but we need to hook them first." Another producer, James, chimed in with forced enthusiasm. "We've got this great bit planned where Stephen challenges you to break things. Boards, bricks, maybe a watermelon." Chuck leaned back in his chair. When he spoke, his words were measured. "I'm 84 years old. I've broken enough things in my life. I came here to talk about breaking the cycle of youth violence, not fruit." The room went quiet. Sarah cleared her throat. "We understand, but..." Chuck cut her off, politely but firmly. "No, I don't think you do. I agreed to this appearance specifically to discuss veterans' mental health and at-risk youth programs. If that's changed, we need to address it now." Marcus's smile was strained. "Nothing's changed. We just want to make sure the segment is entertaining." Chuck stood. "Helping veterans isn't entertaining enough?" James tried to lighten the mood. "Hey, no one's saying that. We're just trying to balance." Chuck's interruption was calm, but final. "You're trying to turn me into a circus act. I've played that game before. Not interested anymore." The meeting ended with promises of compromise, but the seeds of conflict were already planted. Everyone in that room knew it, even if no one wanted to admit it. 2 hours later, Chuck sat in the makeup chair while a young artist named Kelly worked on his face. She was trying to make small talk, clearly nervous. Kelly's voice was soft, almost hesitant. "I watched Walker, Texas Ranger with my dad growing up. He loved that show." Chuck smiled slightly. "Good memories?" "The best," she said, then added quietly, "He was a Marine. Did 3 tours in Afghanistan." Chuck turned to look at her directly. "Is he okay?" Her hands paused. "He's adjusting. That's actually why I was excited you were coming on. My dad volunteers with veterans now. He'd love what you're doing." Chuck reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. "Give this to him. Tell him to call. We always need good people." She took the card with trembling fingers. "Thank you." That moment of genuine connection stood in sharp contrast to what was about to happen on stage. At 5:30, Stephen Colbert swept into the green room where Chuck was waiting. The host's energy was manic, performative even off camera. Colbert's greeting was enthusiastic but somehow hollow. "Chuck, the man, the myth, the legend. Ready to have some fun out there?" Chuck stood, shook his hand. Ready to talk about the veterans program. Colbert's smile flickered. Right. The charity thing. We'll definitely get to that. But first, we're going to have some laughs, yeah? The audience is pumped. They're expecting Chuck Norris. Chuck's response was even. They're getting Chuck Norris. The real one. Not the internet meme. Colbert laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Come on, those jokes are gold. Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups, he pushes the earth down. Classic. Those jokes have raised millions for charity, Chuck said. I'm grateful for that. But I'm here as a person, not a punchline. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Colbert's assistant appeared at the door. 5 minutes to stage, Stephen. Colbert patted Chuck's shoulder with false camaraderie. Don't worry, we'll make you look good out there. Chuck's reply was quiet but firm. I'm not worried about looking good. I'm worried about doing good. They walked to the stage entrance in silence. The audience was buzzing, excited to see a living legend. They had no idea they were about to witness something entirely different. The segment started predictably. Colbert's introduction was full of energy and jokes. Colbert's voice boomed across the studio. Ladies and gentlemen, our next guest is so tough. When he was born, the only person who cried was the doctor. Please welcome Chuck Norris. The audience erupted. Chuck walked out, waved, shook Colbert's hand, and sat down. The clash began almost immediately. Colbert leaned forward with theatrical excitement. Chuck, I have to ask, is it true that you can kill 2 stones with 1 bird? The audience laughed. Chuck didn't. Chuck's response was patient but pointed. Stephen, I appreciate the humor, but I'd really like to talk about why I'm here. We have 22 veterans taking their own lives every day in this country. That's not a joke. The audience went quiet. Colbert's smile became forced. Of course. But come on, one more joke. Is it true that when you do a push-up, you're actually pushing the earth away from you? Chuck's jaw tightened visibly. Stephen, I've buried friends who served this country. Young men and women who came home broken and couldn't find help. You want to make jokes? Fine. But I came here to talk about solutions. Colbert shifted uncomfortably, his tone becoming defensive. Hey, we're just having fun here. This is a comedy show. Chuck leaned forward. And there's nothing funny about veteran suicide rates. There's nothing funny about kids joining gangs because they have no other options. You invited me here. Did you think I was going to do karate tricks like a trained SEAL? The tension was palpable. The audience didn't know whether to laugh or stay silent. Colbert tried to regain control. Look, we all support veterans. But this is about entertainment. Chuck's interruption was sharp. No, this is about priorities. You'd rather laugh at fake stories about me than hear real stories about people who need help. That says more about you than me. Colbert's face reddened. Are you calling me unpatriotic? Chuck stood up. I'm calling you shallow. There's a difference. Gasps rippled through the audience. Colbert stood too, his height advantage meaningless against Chuck's presence. Colbert's voice rose, defensive and angry. You can't just come on my show and insult me. Chuck's response was calm but devastating. I didn't come on your show to insult you. I came to help people. You're the one who decided Chuck Norris jokes were more important than veteran suicide prevention. If that insults you, maybe look in the mirror. The stage manager stepped forward, but Chuck was already walking toward the exit. He stopped at the edge of the stage, turned back to address the audience directly. Chuck's words carried across the silent studio. Every day, veterans in this country struggle with demons they brought home from war. Every day, kids in rough neighborhoods look for someone to believe in them. I've spent the last 20 years trying to help both groups. That's what I wanted to talk about tonight. Instead, your host wanted me to break boards and tell jokes. Ask yourself, which one matters more? He walked off, leaving Colbert standing alone on stage, the usual sharp-tongued host momentarily speechless. The commercial break was chaos. Producers scrambled, Colbert huddled with his team, and the audience buzzed with shocked conversation. Some pulled out phones, already posting about what they'd witnessed. In the hallway, Chuck was met by Marcus, who was practically hyperventilating. Marcus's words came out in a rush. Mr. Norris, please, we can fix this. Come back out. We'll do this segment your way. Chuck's response was firm. No. You had your chance. You chose entertainment over substance. That's your right. Walking away is mine. Sarah Chin appeared, her face flushed. You can't just leave. We have a show to do. Chuck turned to her. You have a show to do. I have a mission to complete. They're not the same thing. As he headed for the exit, Kelly, the makeup artist, appeared in the hallway. She pressed something into his hand, a photo. Kelly's voice was thick with emotion. This is my dad. In case you meant it about calling. Chuck looked at the photo, a Marine in dress blues, proud but haunted around the eyes. He nodded. I meant it. Every word. Outside the theater, the evening air was cool and clear. Chuck's driver was waiting, but he waved him off. I'll walk for a bit. His phone was already buzzing. His publicist, his wife Gina, his business manager. Word traveled fast, but Chuck didn't answer. He walked down Broadway, past tourists and New Yorkers, most not recognizing the legend in their midst. His phone rang with a number he recognized, his old friend and fellow veteran advocate, Gary Sinise. Gary's voice was concerned. Chuck, just saw what happened. You okay? Chuck's reply was tired but resolute. I'm fine, Gary. Just disappointed. Thought things might be different. Gary sighed. They never are. Entertainment always wins over education in that world. Not always, Chuck said. Just too often. Gary's question was direct. What now? Chuck stopped walking, looked at the city lights around him. Now? Now I do what I always do. Keep working. Keep helping. With or without their platform. Within an hour, the clips were everywhere. Not official footage. Someone in the audience had recorded the whole exchange. The video went viral within minutes. Hashtag Chuck Stands Up began trending. But more interesting were the responses. Veterans flooded social media with support. Parents shared stories about how Chuck's programs had saved their kids from gang life. Mental health advocates praised him for trying to shift focus to real issues. But the media response was predictably divided. Some called Chuck a hero for standing up to the entertainment machine. Others labeled him difficult, unable to take a joke, past his prime. Colbert's show addressed it that night, after Chuck left. Colbert's words were carefully chosen, but rang hollow. Colbert spoke to his audience with practiced sincerity. Sometimes in live television, things don't go as planned. We respect Chuck Norris and his advocacy work. We simply had different visions for tonight's segment. But the damage was done. The next day, 3 major veterans organizations publicly sided with Chuck. Donations to his charities spiked. Media requests poured in, but Chuck declined them all with a simple statement. I said what I needed to say. Actions matter more than arguments. A week later, something unexpected happened. Colbert called Chuck directly. Not his people, Colbert himself. Colbert's voice over the phone was different, quieter. Chuck, it's Stephen. I owe you an apology. Chuck listened without interrupting. Colbert continued, his words seeming genuine. My daughter saw the clip. She's studying social work, focusing on veteran services. She asked me why I thought jokes were more important than the work you're doing. I didn't have a good answer. Chuck's response was measured. We all make choices, Stephen. What matters is what we do next. I'd like to do a segment on your programs. A real one. No jokes, no games. Just the work. Chuck was quiet for a moment. Send me a proposal. We'll see. They never did do that segment. But something else happened. Colbert's show began featuring more serious segments about veteran issues. Small changes, but changes nonetheless. 3 months later, Chuck received a letter that made everything worthwhile. It was from Kelly's father, the Marine in the photo. The letter read, Mr. Norris, my daughter gave me your card. I've been volunteering with your program for 2 months now. First time I've felt useful since I came home. Thank you for standing up on that show. Thank you for remembering that we matter more than ratings. Semper Fi. Chuck kept that letter in his office, next to photos of kids from his programs, next to commendations from veteran organizations, next to all the things that mattered more than applause. The Chuck Norris jokes still circulate on the internet. People still laugh at the exaggerated stories of his strength and invincibility. But those who watched that night in Colbert's studio saw something more powerful than any meme. They saw a man choose principle over popularity, substance over spectacle. At 84, Chuck Norris could have played along, told the jokes, collected the appearance fee, and gone home. Instead, He reminded everyone that some battles are worth fighting, even when the cameras are rolling and the audience is expecting a show. The real Chuck Norris fact that emerged that night wasn't about his physical strength or his martial arts skills. It was simpler and more powerful. When given a choice between being a punchline or making a point, he chose to stand for something real. In the green room of life, that's the kind of strength that matters most. If this story of a legend who refused to be reduced to a punchline moved you, if it reminded you that real strength means standing up for what matters, then subscribe. Because in a world where entertainment often trumps substance, where veteran suicides are ignored for cheap laughs, we need more stories like this. Chuck Norris showed us that night what real toughness looks like. It's not about breaking boards or telling jokes. It's about breaking the silence on issues that matter, even when the whole studio wants you to just play along. Subscribe for more stories of people who choose purpose over popularity, who remind us that the biggest fight is always for those who can't fight for themselves.